The Sixth Extinction by Marko Vovk. Introduction. AI video sample. Book available fall 2025. Link below. Most of what you are about to read really happened, or is about to. This is not a story of distant myth or idle speculation, but a chronicle built on the ruins of our own world, the evidence scattered across deserts, buried in landfills, encoded in ancient tablets, and whispered in the DNA of every living thing. It is the story of how a planet of 8 billion souls, at the height of its knowledge and power, dwindled to less than 3 million in just a few generations. Not by war, not by plague, but by a slow, self-inflicted unraveling. And it is the story of the 9 who returned to witness the aftermath, tasked with deciding whether Earth deserved another chance. The Anunnaki ship, Anu's Hope, cut through the blackness of space, its obsidian hull reflecting the pale blue glow of a planet that once teemed with life. Inside, the crew of 9 prepared for descent. Enlil, their indomitable captain, sat at the helm, his eyes scanning data feeds from every corner of the globe. Nergal, the master of strategy and secrets, monitored radiation levels and mapped the scars of nuclear disasters. Inanna, sharp-eyed and analytical, cataloged the subtle collapse of forests, oceans, and mines. Utu, the youngest and most curious, toggled between maps of ancient cities and fields now gone to seed. Nisaba, ever precise, tracked the chemical signatures of pesticides, plastics, and heavy metals. Belay, the environmentalist, watched with a heavy heart as the ship's sensors revealed the true extent of the damage. Ninsun, the crew's emotional anchor, tried to find beauty in the devastation, while Enlilzu, the analytical prodigy, processed terabytes of data in seconds. Damkina, the healer and nurturer, prepared for the daunting task of restoring life to a dying world. The ship's AI, Astra, linked them all through shimmering wristbands, each a lifeline, a recorder, a translator, and a shield.
Astra's voice was calm, almost maternal, as she briefed the crew. Population at peak 8 billion in 2025. Current estimate 2.7 million. Primary cause, collapse of birth rates, environmental toxicity, cognitive decline. No major war, no single disaster. The extinction was slow, quiet, and almost invisible until it was too late.
As Anu's Hope pierced the Van Allen belt, the crew watched the planet come into focus. The blue and green marble of legend was now a patchwork of brown smog, dead rivers, and ghostly cities. The oceans shimmered with oil slicks and plastic continents. From orbit, the scars of humanity's ambition were everywhere. The pockmarks of open-pit mines, the faded grid lines of abandoned metropolises, the glowing halos of radiation from forgotten reactors and bomb test sites.
Enlil's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a deep unease. We engineered them to be clever, adaptable, and ambitious. We gave them the means to build wonders. But we also gave them the tools of their own undoing.
Nergal's tone was colder. They had every advantage: water, sun, resources. And yet they poisoned their own nest. Slowly, methodically, and with astonishing creativity.
Astra's sensors painted a grim picture. Radiation signatures, Chernobyl, Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, over 2,000 nuclear bomb test sites, 500 nuclear reactors, most now silent, but their waste seeps into the soil and sea. Plastics in every ocean, microfibers in every fish, PFAS and heavy metals in the water table. The air itself is laced with nanoparticles of aluminum, barium, strontium, and sulfur, byproducts of their endless quest to control the weather and each other.
The crew's descent was a survey of loss. They passed over the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, 1.6 million square kilometers of floating debris, a monument to convenience and denial. They watched as the Amazon, once the lungs of the world, was reduced to a patchwork of stumps and fire scars. The Sahara, once a green cradle of civilization, now stretched wider every year, swallowing towns and memories alike. But the most chilling discovery was not the visible destruction, but the invisible unraveling of the human mind.
Astra's analysis was unflinching. Average human brain size declined by 14% since 2000. Dopamine systems hijacked by digital addiction, attention spans shorter than a goldfish's, birth rates collapsed as fertility plummeted, endocrine disruptors, stress, and a culture of distraction.
The last generations lived in a fog of manipulated news, engineered entertainment, and carefully curated half-truths. Even the survivors barely understood what had happened. The crew realized that humanity's true extinction event was not a bang, but a whimper, a slow forgetting, a turning away from each other and the world. Each group was compartmentalized, each mind shaped by what it was allowed to see. The result was a civilization brilliant in its achievements but blind to its own undoing, unable to unite or act before it was too late. As the Anunnaki explored further, they found graveyards of plastic and bone, rivers glowing with chemical runoff, and forests reduced to stumps and ash. Radiation zones stretched for miles, and the air itself sapped their strength. Humanity's last days had been marked by fear, secrecy, and a desperate scramble for survival. Each community hoarding what it could, each government hiding its failures behind layers of distraction and spectacle. The planet's once great cities were now mausoleums, echoing with the ghosts of ambition and regret. The 9 Anunnaki were not just observers, but judges and architects of what would come next. They debated in hushed tones, their own mission layered with secrets even they did not all share. Some knowledge was compartmentalized, nested within the minds of only a few. Enlil knew the full scope. The plan was not to save the old humanity, but to clean the planet and begin again. The genetic rot was too deep, the social fabric too frayed. The new mission was to build colonies, design a better human, one resistant to addiction, able to think clearly, and capable of thriving on a planet restored to balance. They began their work. Nano-drones dismantled plastic polymers into inert dust. Neutrino shields sealed leaking reactors. CRISPR-engineered bacteria purged toxic algal blooms. Seeds were gathered from vaults beneath the ice, animals collected from the last wild places, and shelters built in the high mountains and hidden valleys. The process would take generations, but the Anunnaki were patient. They had learned from the failures of the past, and this time they would not repeat them. Yet, even as they worked, the planet resisted. The climate, destabilized by centuries of manipulation, lashed out with storms, droughts, and unpredictable seasons. Old threats lingered in the shadows. The Nephilim, ancient hybrids of Anunnaki and human, rumored to have survived in the deep places of the world, waiting for a chance to rise again. The crew kept watch, their sensors tuned to every anomaly, every unexplained signal.
Astra monitored the survivors, small bands of humans scattered in remote valleys and mountain strongholds.
Most had abandoned the cities long ago, reverting to a kind of tribal existence. Birth rates remained low, and the children who did survive were different, quieter, more cautious, their eyes older than their years. Some showed signs of adaptation, resistance to toxins, a knack for finding clean water, an uncanny sense of direction. The Anunnaki debated whether these were the seeds of a new beginning or the last echoes of a fading past. The ship's logs recorded it all. The chemical signatures of forgotten industries, the genetic drift of isolated populations, the slow recovery of forests in abandoned zones. The crew mapped every Superfund site, every brownfield, every leaking tank, and buried barrel. They cataloged the last wild herds, the remnant flocks of birds, the stubborn patches of coral that still glowed with life. They documented the rise and fall of religions, the cycles of hope and despair, the fleeting moments of beauty amid the ruins. As the years passed, the Anunnaki's work took on a rhythm. They split into teams, each tasked with a different aspect of the restoration. Enlil and Nergal focused on the great river valleys, purging them of heavy metals and radioactive sludge. Inanna and Nisaba worked in the forests, coaxing new growth from scorched earth. Belay and Ninsen tended the survivors, teaching them how to farm without chemicals, how to purify water, how to heal old wounds. Enlil and Damkina managed the gene banks, selecting traits for resilience, empathy, and creativity. But the mission was not without conflict. Old rivalries flared, secrets threatened to surface, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on them all. Some questioned whether they had the right to intervene, to play God with a world that was not truly theirs. Others argued that inaction was a greater crime, that to leave the planet to its fate would be the final betrayal. Through it all, Astra remained the silent witness, recording every decision, every doubt, every act of courage or cowardice. Her algorithms projected 1,000 possible futures, each shaped by the choices of the 9. Some led to renewal, others to further decline. The outcome was never certain. In the end, the Anunnaki knew that the old humanity could not be saved. The damage was too deep, the genetic rot too advanced, so they set about their true work, building new colonies and designing a better, stronger human, one that could resist addiction, think clearly, and thrive on a planet restored to balance. They gathered seeds from vaults beneath the ice, collected animals from the last wild places, and built shelters in the high mountains and hidden valleys. The process would take generations, but the Anunnaki were patient. They had learned from the failures of the past, and this time they would not repeat them. This is not a story of gods and monsters, but of builders and survivors, of a world broken and remade, and of the hope that even after the worst destruction, something new and extraordinary can rise from the ashes. The Sixth Extinction is not just a warning, it is an invitation to witness the next chapter of Earth's story, where the mistakes of the past are finally faced and the future is forged by hands both ancient and new. If you want to know what really happened and what might come next, turn the page. The truth is waiting.